And so this is my familiar possessed Aussa deck. That's weird. I just noticed the name is all messed up on the card, but over here it says familiar possessed. Anyway, so of course we have also the Earth Charmer. Flip. While this card is face up on the field, take control of one Earth monster your opponent controls. So you flip it, take control of the monster. As long as this card stays face up, you get control of that monster. This is good against. You could potentially use this effect against call-offs, Madoches, Trap Tricks, YUGIOHs, and it goes on and on. You know, any Earth style deck, Notorial deck. You got Avalanche also. You will use her a lot because this deck is synchros. You know, it does exceed, of course, but one of the main focus is synchro summoning, so that you have control, because this is a control style deck. So you use Avalanche and Aussa, combo it with Archfiend Eater. Since she's a spellcaster, you can special summon Archfiend Eater, of course, right? Then you can use Avalanching Aussa's effect, which is once per turn, tribute one Earth monster except her. So special summon one Earth monster from your hand. The monster special summoned by this effect is destroyed if Avalanching Aussa is removed from your center field. So what you end up doing is you'll summon her, then you'll summon Archfiend Eater. Now you can go into a rank 4 play if you want, or use her effect to tribute Archfiend Eater, and you can special summon from your hand any Earth monster you want, but you want to summon either Key Mouse, which is a 1-star tuner, or Shiba Warrior Taro, because it's a 2-star Earth tuner, and that will allow you to go into either a 5-star synchro play or a 6-star synchro play. Since the tuners in her are Earth, you can go into a 5-star Notorial Beast or a 6-star Notorial Barkin, depending against what deck, you know, depending on what deck you're going against. If your opponent is heavy on traps, you know, you want to use Notorial Barkin, of course. If your opponent's heavy on spells, you want to use, you know, Notorial Beast. Like, for example, Notorial Beast would be good against Shaddolls because of the Shadow Fusion, good against what they're called, Dark Worlds, because of their spell cards, Exodia decks, Spellbook of Prophecy, even you can use it against Fire Fist because of Tenki and Tensu, Madoche because of Ticket and Chateau, and so forth and so forth. You get the idea. You could potentially even use it against Pendulum's, you know, decks, depending on the ruling, of course. You could potentially use this against Pendulum decks, so like call-offs, for example, so you could prevent them from Pendulum summoning. Of course, Notorial Barkin is good against decks like Trap Tricks, Artifact decks, because they use the Artifact Sanctum, so you can negate it. I don't know the ruling per se, but I'm assuming if you do negate Sanctum's effect, its secondary effect will kick in, and they could potentially pop your Notorial Barkin. But because it's an effect of a trap, I don't know, maybe you could also negate that as well, since you can activate Barkin's effect multiple times on a chain as long as you could afford to banish 2 cards from your graveyard. But anyway, it's all about play testing, right? So these 2 synchros obviously are the main synchros you want to create, because this helps you control the duel. You know, it helps you control your opponent's spells and traps. Stuff like, you know, Bottomless, Mirror Force, Trenchal, Karma Cut, Wing Blast, stuff like that. Also, Barkion's good against, of course, Burning Abyss, because they use a lot of those cards, as well as, you know, their Fire Lake. So this is useful against that. Alright, Key Mouse, he has an effect. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can add one level 3 or lower beast type warrior monster from your deck to the graveyard. It would be nice if he also did beast warrior, but he can only do beast types, which means you just will get a copy of himself. If he said level 4 or lower, of course you would have been able to get an Archfiend Eater, but it does not. So very little synergy, very little. But the ability to self replace itself, you know, float or self rota is still useful. But typically, obviously, the whole goal is to use it for synchro summoning. Shiva Warrior Taro. It's a really good monster. Can't be destroyed by battle. When a card on the field is destroyed by battle or by card effect, return this face-up card to its owner's hand. So if your opponent pops your back row, this will bounce back to your hand, or they destroy one of your other monsters, draw battle, this will bounce back to your hand. You know, it's a slight drawback, so to speak. But typically you just synchro, but a lot of times this will be face down. So when your opponent summons a whole bunch of monsters and try to OTK you, this can't be destroyed by battle, so it would prevent the OTK, right? And then we got No Movement Exterminations, useful against, you know, face down traps or even face down spell cards that your opponent were setting as bluffs, but now they got banners, so they're mad. Especially if they set a Shaddoll Fusion for some reason, whatever, or a Super Poly or something, you can just banish it. Especially if they have ways of adding it back to their hand or deck, you can prevent that. This is particularly going to be useful against cards like Mirror Force, Magic Cylinder, you know, Bottomless, Trap Hole, regular Trap Hole, Space-Time Trap Hole, stuff like that. Because you can get rid of the multiple copies, so that reduces how many trap-related responses your opponent has. Plus, it can help you see what's in your opponent's deck, what he does and doesn't have in his deck, because you have to, by rulings, you have to check and confirm that he no longer has any extra copies of cards. Obviously, when you use this card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro, after you've used it, you get to see your opponent's deck, he gets to see yours. So you can look through his deck and see what he does and doesn't play, memorize if you're that good at memorizing the whole deck, and then, you know, continue to duel, and now you have knowledge that will help you win the duel. Then we got Spell Shadow Arrow. It's mainly to go up against pendulums, you know, like the Qualoffs, for example. Eventually Performa Pals, the DTDs, the DDD deck. And so on and so on. It's good against, you know, Tenki, Tensu, you know, for the Fire Fist and so forth and so forth. You could just use it just to burn your opponent. You could get rid of stuff like, you know, field spells. You could get rid of stuff like swords, revealing light. You know, it's just generally good. You could also chain it to an activation of a spell, so you can destroy the spell and deal damage. So this could potentially win you a duel, you know, just by dealing that little bit of damage. It could also help you in time at competitive play when the duel is almost, you know, you're running out of time in a duel. You could potentially just win the duel just by making sure that you have more life than your opponent by using this card to reduce your opponent's life points to less than yours. MST, generic, destroys back row to get rid of anything that might be a problem, like Vanity's Emptiness, just a face down set trap or a field spell that might be a problem that you want to get rid of, or an equip card, especially if your opponent powers up the monster when an equip card attacks. Then you can spring this on them, destroying their equip card, and then their monster would just run into your monster and die or resolve battle. So on and so on. Red screen for defense, and of course you're going to use the abilities of Barkion, Notorious Beast, for example. Whatever you have, whichever one you have on the field, or if you have both, even better. To protect red screen, so that way you can attack but your opponent can't. Wing Blast will help you get rid of anything that can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. It will help you get rid of anything like traps or field spells or continuing spells, anything like that. It's even good to just annoy somebody. Because let's say you set this card and they play MST on it, then you can chain this, target their MST, put their MST on top of their deck. So now the following turn they'll be forced to, you know, draw that MST again, and this time you probably don't even have, you know, back roll. You don't have a spell or trap they can destroy, so that's just a dead draw. You could deliberately cause it to be a dead draw, and that just wasted wasted their turn. Just like the MST was technically a waste this turn, and then when I draw it again the following turn, it's another waste. So that's useful, right? And then we got another thing, of course, is a lot of times you don't want monsters to go graveyard, obviously, especially with stuff like Shaddoll's, Burning Abyss, things like this. You don't want them to go to the graveyard, so you don't want to use a card to send them to the graveyard. You rather send them back into, into the extra deck or back into the deck, so that way, they don't get their graveyard effects, especially Shaddall fusion monsters, because when they go from the field to graveyard, they can get Shaddall fusion back. So it's better to send their fusion back to extra deck, so that way they don't have a fusion, so they can't get their Shaddall fusion back from the graveyard or any Shaddall spell or trap. Call Haunted, of course, so you can bring back your monsters. Because let's say you have a Barkion as an example on the field, and somebody plays Dark Hole. Obviously, Barkion can't negate it, so Barkion will be destroyed. But after that, you can play Call Haunted, bring back Barkion, and now you have his ability again. Now you can banish more cards from your graveyard to negate more traps, and vice versa. If your opponent uses a trap like Mirror Force or something and get rid of Notorious Beast, you can Call Haunted and bring him back, and so forth and so forth. And that could apply for any one of your monsters. Dark Bride, just to help you control the duel more, control this, what spells and traps do get activated or do not get activated. So that's a very useful card to have. So it's just there for win more and stuff, I guess. Soul Charge will help you bring back a lot of monsters, especially if you had a Notorious Beast on the field and then you summoned your Key Mouse, Synchro, and make a Barkion. You can use Soul Charge, right? Pay 1,000. You can also use Call Haunted, of course, to bring back the Beast, Notorious Beast from the graveyard. Now you have the Beast and Barkion on the field, ready to negate spells and traps. Slacker Magician, in case you end up in a scenario where you're drawing too many Key Mouses, you can use them, overlay them, make Slacker Magician to give you some type of defense. Gachi, pretty much the same thing. You use the 2 Towers if you want to overlay them and make a Gachi, which would be a stronger defense, plus he gives extra power boost for attack and defense to all your monsters, so make them stronger. That's always good. If you would be destroyed by a battle or a card fight, you can detach material to prevent that, of course, so that's extra good defense to defend you. Number 101, detach 2 materials to steal one of your opponent's attack position monsters with special summon and turn it into a material for this card. If this card would be destroyed by battle card fight, you can detach a material, so it is not Exciton Knight. Detach material. You can once per chain during your main phase or your opponent's battle phase, and if you control more cards than if your opponent controls more cards in their hand and field than you, then you can activate and resolve this effect and destroy all cards on the field other than himself. For the remainder of the turn, he takes no damage, and this is a quick effect, so it's chainable. to whatever your opponent might try to do. And of course, Sky Blaster, cast out. Detach one material, target one monster on the field, put it face down, or detach two materials, target one face up card on the field, and return back to the owner's deck, and they shuffle it. That's good for getting rid of monsters that can't be destroyed by battle or card effect, or any spells or traps you want to get rid of. That's a problem. Number 80, Rhapsody in Berserk. Good against any graveyard based decks that get effects from graveyards, or just decks that utilize the graveyard a lot. This is good against that, because up to twice per turn you could detach a material from this card to banish one card from your opponent's graveyard. It's good for getting rid of stuff like Shaddoll Fusion, any Burning Abyss monster, any Shaddoll monster from your opponent's graveyard, any Lightsworn monsters, so they have less Lightsworns in the graveyard to summon Judgment Dragon, and so on and so on. And also has the ability that while face up the field, you can attach to once per turn. While face up the field, you can attach this card to one face up XYZ monster you control, and that monster gains 1200 attack. So that's very useful to make your XYZs stronger. Great Old God Shithug. I don't even know how to pronounce that. I just say the Great Old One. Apparently, the Great Old One. It's a 4-star synchro with 2200 attack, 200 defense, fire, which means you could rekindle him, right? Okay, I love that. And then with this card is synchro summon. You can return all rank 4 XYZ monsters in the field to the extra deck. So this is a good way to hurt your opponent if they have a 4-axis type of rank 4 deck or something, where they constantly make a lot of rank 4s, or they just have a whole bunch of rank 4s like a Gyurgyo OTK. If you survive a Gyurgyo OTK, then you could potentially create this monster and then just wipe out all their rank 4s by returning back to the extra deck. As this card is used as a fusion material monster for a fusion summon, draw one card. Or if it's used in an XYZ, or an XYZ monster that was summoned using this card as XYZ material gains this effect, which is when it is XYZ summoned, draw a card. So it's pretty good. Obviously you'll in this deck you'll exceed with it. Typically, you'll exceed with it, and then you'll get that ability to draw an extra card. So that's very useful. Then we have Ally of Justice Cataster, level 5. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles a monster that's not a dark type monster, destroy that monster immediately without damage calculation. So that's a really good card against any deck that is not dark. This could be good against Lightsworns, Infernoids, what is that called? The Qualoffs, Madolches, Satellanites, Constellars, so forth and so forth. Anything that's not dark, this thing can destroy. And of course, we already talked about Notorious Beast and Barkion, the basically the bread and butter of your deck. Flameveil, your Quasar, Quasars, I guess, has piercing, and every time it inflicts battle damage to your opponent, it gets 300 stronger, and that power boost stays on him while he's face up, and it just keeps going up and up every time you deal damage. Gotta have piercers. Ever when you go up against a deck that's a lot of floaters or monsters that can't die by battle, or Yang Zings, of course, they float. Burning Abyss, they float. So you want to make sure you keep dealing damage. Black Rose helps you clear the field, just like Exoton. Stardust Dragon with red screen will help you stall for the win, right? Red Dragon Archfiend is good for getting rid of all your opponent's attack position monsters, and then you can attack them directly for 3,000. Worm, good for getting rid of up to 3 cards your opponent controls. Typically, you might want to get rid of their back row so you can attack and not run into a Deep Prison Mirror Force or something like that. but also, you know, you could just get rid of a whole bunch of monsters in one shot, you know what I mean? So it's a really, really good card. And the way you would make him in a single turn is that you will use Avalanching Aussa. You summon her, you'll special summon Archfiend Eater because she's a spellcaster. You use her effect to tribute Archfiend Eater, so you can summon Key Mouse. Now you have a 4-star and a 1-star on the field. And then if you have an extra, because you're going to need an extra Archfiend Eater, now you can special summon it. Now you have a 4, and a 1. That right there is 3 monsters. They equal up to 9 stars. And there you go. And now you can make Mistworm, which is how you're going to make Mistworm, is with that combo. The extra deck's a little tight, so there's not that much space, but if there was, I would want to add Leo, Sacred Trees. Let's see. Show you what he looks like. You should know what he looks like already, but if not, this is what he looks like. He's a really good monster because it can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects except during your main phase too. So that's good. He can't be Regeki Break, Karma Cut, Composed, Wing Blasted, Deprisoned. Just can't be targeted. You know, 101 Sky Blaster. It's just a great monster because it can't be targeted. And obviously you do the same combo I explained, except of summoning the Key Mouse. You will summon Shiva Warrior Taro instead, and that way you have 10 stars in total, and you can create, you know, Leo, Keeper of the Sacred Trees. That's the end of the deck profile.